A big shakeup to how college all-star games are going to work. The Arizona Cardinals still hold the top pick, but for how long? The Senior Bowl invites have started going out. This edge rusher class is loaded. We're going to talk about all that and more coming up next on the Draft Countdown podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Bosarge, joined as always by my co-host, Shane P. Hellam. Shane, 168 days, 22 hours, 58 minutes, and 19 seconds away from the 2024 NFL Draft.
Yeah, we're steamrolling past the halfway point of the NFL season now, and we're moving to only a couple weeks left of the college football regular season. So we are deep into it, and you can tell, you can see by the people looking at the site and the numbers, and people are starting to get into draft mode here pretty quickly.
Yeah, no doubt, especially that big 7-round mock you posted on Monday. People definitely were interested in that. Just a reminder, if you're new to the channel, come across this live feed, be either on Twitter or on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button there, hit the notification bell to go live each and every week. If you've got questions and you're watching along live in the chat, go ahead and drop one in there. If you're following on Twitter, send a question to @DraftCountdown. We'll answer it at the end of the show, or on Discord, on the Draft Countdown Discord channel, of which if you're not a member, go to draftcountdown.com, go to the top right of the search bar, click the link there to join the Discord channel and ask your question there, or just discuss anything that you want to talk about. We are always in there jumping around, talking about all that good stuff. But Shane, I led with it at the top. Humongous news, I think, as far as all-star games go. The NFL released a statement today saying that underclassmen that declare for the draft will now be eligible to play in the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, and the HBCU Legacy Bowl. This was announced just today and kind of like took the steam out of us because we both released Senior Bowl predictions each of the last Wednesday, and kind of hurt that a little bit. But first, I mean, what do you think this means in the grand scheme of things, for 2024 and beyond?
I think it's a good thing for the Senior Bowl, for the Shrine Game. I know a lot of people are kind of upset, obviously being called the Senior Bowl. There's going to be juniors there, or the tradition, the old school way and mentality. It was always kind of weird in terms of, well, who's eligible for the game, who's not eligible for the game. Especially they added, when I started covering the graduation, hey, if you graduated from college, you can play, even if it's only been 3 years, and that made people eligible. So it's like, let everyone play if they want to play. We're still gonna have most of the underclassmen are not going to play in the game. The high profile first round picks into second round picks, they're not going to. But you have a lot of underclassmen that declare, maybe they're mid-round picks, they want to move up, they haven't run at the combine yet. Their agents, hey, this might be a good way to talk to teams to get in. And you talked about on Twitter, Brian, this helps the games like the Hula Bowl, the smaller bowls, because now some of these older players are going to not go to the Senior Bowl. They're not going to get picked for the Shrine. Well, you got a pretty pretty good roster maybe in these smaller games. I think it helps everyone out, makes for better all-star games, makes it better to scout. I just want better talent. To me, this is the best of every world.
I mean, let's look at it like this. Last year, it was what, 6? The number of underclassmen to declare was down exponentially last year from what it has been. And we've talked about that ad nauseum as to why, because of the extra year and everybody, the NIL money now, people you don't have to rush out to be a 7th round pick when you can just stay in college and make more than that, right? So kids are going back to school more. So the number of underclassmen come down, but let's just take that number last year. I believe it was 67 or 69. I'm not sure. Let's just say 30 of those guys go to the Senior Bowl. 30 guys don't. Another 10 go to the Shrine or whatever, and then so on and so forth. Those number of players that would have been to the Senior Bowl, well, those 30 underclassmen that are in the Senior Bowl now, that takes 30 senior players down that go down to the Shrine. Well, that's 30 more players that don't go to the Shrine now that are going to get down to the Hula Bowl, because remember, there is no NFLPA Bowl anymore. They disbanded that game this year. So now the Hula Bowl is the number 3 collegiate all-star game, right? And I don't think there's any argument there. Now, they were almost as good as the NFLPA last year anyway. So they're now the de facto number 3. Their roster's going to get better here. So I feel like it's good for them, and to a lesser extent, maybe the Tropical Bowl and the CGS might get a handful of players they wouldn't have gotten as well. So it's going to be interesting from that perspective. As far as not calling it the Senior Bowl or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like you said, there's been third-year redshirt sophomores that played in the Senior Bowl. A few years ago, there was a receiver from Clemson. I can't remember which one it was now, but he was a 3-year player. But he graduated early, so he played in the Senior Bowl. Well, obviously, he's not a senior. So let's just let that go. It doesn't matter. It's just a name, right?
Yeah. I mean, they don't have to change the name. Like, they're not going to change the name with that. That's always the case. So, like, let's not worry about what it's called or who's going. What this does is elevate the talent, because the Senior Bowl is not going to take an underclassman just because they're underclassmen either.
No.
They're not just going to be like, okay, well, if you declare you're in, like, they're going to be very picky. They've already built their boards with everyone included. And you might have a surprise, right, Brian? I mean, you might have a surprise that a high-profile player, we've seen it happen, does show up and does declare. I'm sure Jim Nagy's on, going to be on the phone with
right now.
Drake May and Caleb Williams, and here's what we can do. They're not going to show up, but you could have maybe a Malik Neighbors surprisingly show up, and hey, that's exciting for everyone.
Right, Travion Henderson, Ohio State could show.
I mean, the running backs is a really good,
especially in this class, right?
An agent might say, hey, you should go. It might help you be the number 1 running back taken. It might get you in the back end of the first round. So Travion Henderson and Braylon Allen and these running backs, if they get an invite, they might show up.
Yeah, we were talking back and forth on Discord. We don't think like Caleb Williams or Drake May is going to be here, right?
No.
But we're not getting Marvin Harrison Jr. at the Senior Bowl. It would be awesome. I'd love to see it. It's not going to happen. But you could get a Keon Coleman or Xavier Worthy or one of those guys, who wants to try to move themselves up the pecking order, maybe, or like you said, Malik Neighbors, maybe they want to try to go from a late teens, early 20s spot into that top 10. Maybe they want to try to do that. You could see something like that. It's going to be interesting how that works out. I'm here for it though. More talent coming in front of me 3 miles from my front porch. I'm all about it. Let me see the best of the best out there. You had one more thing I want to talk about, because I loved your comment here or your prediction, if you will, on Twitter. You said within 5 years, you think that undrafted players with eligibility left are going to they're going to let them go back to college. You think that's coming?
Yeah, I think that's the next step. It's already kind of been, people are calling for it, but like the NBA does, that you can basically not sign with an agent. And honestly, they might not even have that rule with NIL. Most, like, I know agents who are NIL advisors for college players, and then they're their agent after they graduate. Like,
funny how that works out.
So who cares? Like, that's basically what's going to happen anyway. But if you get drafted, that's it. You're in. And so it gives teams an incentive in those late rounds to draft maybe underclassmen players that they want. But if not, I think a lot of NCAA teams would like to have some of these players back that declare early and mistakenly don't get drafted. I think the NCAA would probably love to have them back, and you have a high profile name that comes back and doesn't get drafted. I don't see how, why that wouldn't happen. I say in 5 years, they're going to let players go back to school ultimately.
Do you want to see it almost like mirror the NBA, where if they don't like their draft position, they can go back? Like in the NBA, if you're a second round pick but you don't sign with an agent, you can go back to college, but that team keeps your rights. Is that something you'd like to see, or just re-enter the draft pool?
I mean, personally, probably not. I think it just makes it a little more complex to predict the draft. Like, it makes my job harder, right? Because I think teams would take some chances on some players more so. But I wouldn't hate it. Like, I'm definitely a for the players guy. Like, if it helps the player out, like, let's help the player out. I don't think the NFL is a little different in that way, that retaining their rights and going and playing somewhere like baseball or basketball isn't going to help you as much as just playing in the NFL. Right. You might as well just play in the NFL. But like, if you want to try to make more money, then I think you should be able to try to do that. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You can go back in the draft, you get undrafted again. Like, oh, whoa, okay. Oh, well.
All right. Sal's got a question in the comments. I figured we'll just go ahead and answer this one here. Can a player announce for the Senior Bowl but then take it back? I thought I remember somebody doing that last year. You are correct. It happened multiple times last year. Rook or Horo, whatever his name is. Anyway, I'm going to butcher that 100 times between now and draft date. He was one of those guys that did it. So, yes, it's definitely a thing that can happen, and is definitely something we will probably see again this year.
Yeah. Gottlieb Ayedzi as well from Frostburg State, transferred to Maryland. So sometimes those transfer requests come in.
He probably should have came on out.
He probably should have after what happened this year. But I would think we'll get to some of the first invites here, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're gonna definitely talk about that.
But I think there's a player that got invited that exact same thing could happen to.
Okay. All right. So let's move on now. And our favorite segment of the week: who is drafting in the top 10 of the NFL draft now? And it's pretty much the same as it was last week. Not a whole lot of change. Arizona still at the top by a half game, because they've played more games than everybody. They haven't had their bye week yet. But are their fortunes about to change, Shane, with Kyler Murray back into the starting lineup, we assume, this week?
Yeah, it seems like he's a full go. I think they're going to win a couple games here with Kyler Murray. I think it could even start this week for the Cardinals, so against the Falcons. But I mean, they have a pretty light schedule. They play the Bears, they play the Steelers, and they could win a game or two.
Well, they're not beating the Steelers at this point, because the NFC West is just not going to beat anybody from the AFC North this year. I don't believe. It just seems to be the way it's going.
Yeah, really.
Picks 2 and 3 belong to the Chicago Bears. Pick 2 by way of Carolina. Pick 3 by Chicago. That doesn't look like that's going to change much. Like, Chicago's probably going to, at minimum at this point, are going to end up with 2 top 5 picks, right?
I think so. The Bears and the Panthers play each other this week, so there's some.
Ooh.
Should is it better to win or better to lose for the Bears in this game?
I don't know. Could go either way.
Yeah, right.
I would think it would be better to lose this one, right? Because you're the half game behind. I don't know. Tyson Bagent starting again for the Bears. Fields still hurt. Speaking of hurt quarterbacks, our team here at number 4, the New York Giants, will be without Daniel Jones for the rest of the season. Was it an Achilles with Jones or an ACL?
I think it was an ACL if I remember correctly.
Okay. Well, he's out for the season,
Yeah,
which is going to give us a NFL record 10th rookie starting quarterback this week, as for some reason an NFL team is allowing Tommy DeVito to start a game. He will be the 10th rookie, the undrafted out of
Illinois,
right? But he transferred from Syracuse.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, the rookie from Illinois will start for the Giants. Who are they playing this week? Doesn't matter. They're losing.
Wow. It just doesn't matter. Look, it's Tommy DeVito is not exactly built to win. They're playing the Cowboys, so that's probably not going to go
well.
Oh,
yeah, definitely loss.
If you had given me 25 chances to guess the 10 rookies that would have started a game,
Tommy DeVito would
no way Tommy DeVito makes that list.
No. Unbelievable. Speaking of teams with quarterback ailments, the Los Angeles Rams at 6, and they go out and dust off Carson Wentz, I guess, to be their backup because they had somebody named Dresser Wynn, who
I didn't watch last year. UT Martin, he wasn't very good. The stats were good. I don't know.
Canada.
He played UT Martin last year, then went to Canada.
Okay. Well, he was because I looked him up today. Yeah, he was playing for the Edmonton Elks.
Yeah, the NFL didn't sign him, so he went to the CFL, but he played UT Martin last year as their starting quarterback.
Yeah, well. Speaking of teams with bad quarterback play, that brings us now to the Green Bay Packers picking 7th, and Jordan Love struggling still. Injuries on that offense as well. Not great for Green Bay. Tampa Bay picking 8th here at 3-5, although Baker Mayfield hasn't played bad for them. Denver picking 9th, and the Tennessee Titans, although they lost last week, through 2 games, Will Levis has not been bad.
Yeah, I mean, the first game was great. The Steeler game was a little more difficult, but he's done pretty well, so good for him.
I'm going to extend this one more here just because I want to. I just thought this was funny when I read it on Twitter over this week. Atlanta picking 11th. Is Arthur Smith the fantasy devil?
Oh, I mean, they had 5 plays at the 1-yard line. Did not have Bijan Robinson in the game for any of the 5 plays. Why'd you draft him? Why would you draft
a running back at number 8 if you're not going to use him in that situation? Also, last week I saw they ran inside the red zone. They ran a trick play where they had the number 2 tight end on their team throw to the number 3 tight end on their team, while the highest drafted tight end in the history of football blocked.
Yes. See, Jonnu Smith is outperforming Kyle Pitts. That's where we're at. Someone I saw, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, gave a nice thesis that when Jonnu Smith scores a touchdown, everyone's like, "Wow, how creative! What good coaching!" When Kyle Pitts scores a touchdown, it's like Kyle Pitts is awesome. So Arthur Smith likes to be the guy that people say is a genius, and that doesn't happen when your good players score.
Yeah, he's going to get his ass run off.
Yeah.
That's going to be
that game was bad for him.
Yeah, it's
Josh Dobbs. Did Josh Dobbs do 12 plays and you couldn't beat him? Unreal.
Yeah, great for Josh Dobbs and
awesome.
that. So yeah, one more quick NFL note before we go. Hey, to the AFC North, a clap here. All 4 AFC North teams currently in the playoffs. The Ravens lead the division. Meanwhile, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, all 5-3, currently in the playoffs. The Bengals have played the highest strength of schedule, so Tankathon has them ranked the highest. But in the standings, they are dead last in the AFC North because they've lost to Cleveland and Baltimore.
I don't know if my Steelers are going to hold up our end of the bargain of all 4 teams making it, but we'll try.
Steelers essentially right now are the 2022 Minnesota Vikings, right?
Yeah,
That's essentially what it is. At some point, they're going to get exposed, but it hasn't happened yet.
First round of the playoffs, I'm sure is where
it will not go well. It will not go well at all. So that's going to do it for our top 10 segment here. Now we're going to look back at week 10 of college football and talk about the best players we watched this past week. Shane, I'll let you lead it off here. Who was the best offensive player that you got your eyes on this week?
Well, I'm going to the LSU Alabama game, and I'm going to highlight Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for LSU. I mean, I'd also highlight Jalen Milroe, the quarterback for Alabama, but I don't think he's coming out to the draft. But Jaden Daniels impressed me. I mean, 219 yards passing against a tough Alabama defense that was in the backfield consistently. He had 163 yards rushing, a lot of that on scrambles, just getting out of there, making something happen. I mean, without him, I don't think that game's very close. And when he went down with a possible concussion, we saw that play out, and that's when Alabama pulled away from that game. 2 passing touchdowns, rushing touchdown. I really wrote off Jaden Daniels after last year. He couldn't throw the ball very well. I think he's pushing to be the 3rd quarterback drafted in the draft at this point.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right there. 2 things quickly about that. You brought up Jalen Milroe. Jesus, what a next gear that guy's got, right?
Yeah, running. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Like he goes from full stop to 60 mile an hour like that. I mean, that guy has just unreal acceleration. But did you think the hit that Dallas Turner delivered was a bit dirty?
Yeah. I mean, it should have been a penalty at the very least. I don't think it's like, that was, Dallas Turner trying to take. I mean, I don't know. It's fine, but it should have been a penalty, especially compared to some of the other penalties called. Alabama got some referee help in that game for sure.
Mighty coincidental that 2 years in a row when Alabama's needed a quarterback to get hurt, they've gotten hurt. Just saying. Anyway, best offensive player I watched this week was a transfer running back that just ripped apart Southern Cal this week, and that was former Mississippi State running back Dylan Johnson, now at Washington. 256 yards on 26 carries, 4 touchdowns in the game. Didn't do much catching the ball, but doesn't have to, right? But we know that he can catch the ball. If you go back and watch the Mississippi State tape, he was one of their leading receivers last year, right? If I'm remembering correctly, as a product of the air raid. So Dylan Johnson, just big day. He's a powerful back, nice balance, in the lower half there. Doesn't go down on first contact easily. I don't think he's going to be a 4.4 guy, probably in that low 4.6 range if I had to guess. But just a big day for him against the Trojans.
Yeah, I mean, huge day, and you could see that was the game plan going in for Washington, really to go behind Dylan Johnson, and it worked. It worked great against the USC.
Yep. Best defensive player you watched this week?
Yeah, player that was not on my radar, but is now after the game. Andrew Chatfield Jr., who's an edge rusher from Oregon State, had 3 sacks in this game, and he was a transfer from Florida, has played a ton of years now in college football. I think this was year like 6 for him, but he was impressive throughout this game. Was consistently in the backfield, like really good power, look like a nice stand-up pass rusher who has a unique skill set. They dropped him back into coverage and try to throw against him, and he got his hand in there. He was pretty sticky in coverage, had 2 additional QB hurries in addition to the 3 sacks. Like he was in Shadur Sanders' face throughout that game and took over. And honestly, without him, I don't know if Oregon State wins. So really good performance and puts him on my draft radar.
Good to hear. Best defensive player I watched this week was SMU edge rusher Elijah Roberts, a guy who I wasn't overly familiar with, but got good size. He sets the edge well at 6'4", 275, forced a fumble on a strip sack after he beat one of the Rice offensive tackles like quick. They line him up all over. They line him up on the edge. They'll line him up inside. So he's got that scheme versatility. Finished the game against Rice with 5 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and that forced fumble.
That's good. I'm going to have to write him down and make sure I go back and give a good watch.
All right, so that's going to end our look back now, and we're now going to look ahead to week 11, and we're going to talk about a couple of games that are happening right now. If you were going to start with, we're going to start with some action. It's that time of year, right? Midweek action, and I'll be watching tonight after the show's over. Akron at Miami of Ohio. It's currently on ESPNU. Couple of probably not a whole lot happening with Akron, so to speak, but a couple of guys for Miami of Ohio that I want to keep my eye on. Their quarterback, Brett Gabbert. I know you've talked about him a few times. Younger brother of longtime NFL journeyman Blaine Gabbert. And former Gamecock running back Rashad Amos had 161 yards rushing last week, had 61 at the half tonight. So I want to see how he's transitioning there and see if maybe he's got some NFL future with him. He's got good size at 6'2", 225.
I was a big fan of Amos, coming out of high school. So excited to see him have some success out there for Miami. Tore up Ohio last week, was really cool.
Yep. Currently on ESPN2, Shane, you'll be watching Eastern Michigan at Toledo. And a big surprise in your mock draft on Monday was was it pick 32, I believe it was, Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell. Very ball hawky corner there. Good length, good size. Tell me about what you like so much about Quinyon Mitchell that's got him in the first round of your latest mock draft.
Yeah, and from what I watched so far of this game, I mean, he's shutting like just a shutdown, corner here in the MAC. Like you said, he has the length. Quinyon Mitchell is a good jam and transition out of that jam. Like he's athletic with some nice strides and rarely I haven't seen him get beat deep. I've seen him get physical. He could tackle. Like feels like a kind of a full package player that just hasn't been challenged too much. So definitely Quinyon Mitchell's a name I think will be a riser here coming up, and hopefully at the Senior Bowl, I think he could really make some noise.
Yep. A couple other players for Toledo to watch out for. Their quarterback, Daquan Finn, probably not entering this draft class. He'll have another year, but he's got some tools that you like. You've mentioned in the past Penny Boone, their running back, is a solid player, and former friend of the Buckeyes there, Dallas Gant, right at linebacker, 6th-year player.
Dallas Gant's had a pretty solid season. I think he can make a team. I like Penny Boone. I think he could make a squad. Samson Evans on the other side for Eastern Michigan is a pretty good running back too. So yeah, not a lot of big names, but some guys that can maybe hang on a camp taxi squad type.
Tomorrow night on ESPN at 6:30, I'll be watching Virginia at Louisville, and this is the first time I've seen the upstart Cardinals this year. Now with Jeff Brom back home there, he's got that team winning a lot of games so far early this year, and they've got a pair of corners to look out for here. Storm Duck transferred over from Oregon and by way of North Carolina, I believe. And Jarvis Brownlee's a solid player as well as Quincy Riley. So 3 good corners there for Louisville on defense. Jamari Thrash, the wide receiver, transferred over from Georgia State, I believe. Potential all-star game selection for him as well. And Jawar Jordan, the running back, is having a great season for Louisville.
Yeah, Jawar Jordan's really impressed me, and he's definitely, I think, in that draftable range for them. You mentioned a lot of the names. It's man, Louisville, it's a stacked team. We haven't seen that in a long time.
I didn't even mention their edge rusher, Ashton Gillott. I know that he's got a big following on draft Twitter there. So some good players from Louisville. Virginia, I mean, they've got some guys. Cam Butler's okay, but he's injured, I believe. So pectoral injury, I believe, for him. And just Chico Bennett's he's a solid player as well.
Chico Bennett, yeah, it's kind of rough goings for Virginia this year.
Yeah, not good. Friday night on FS1, I will be watching one of my favorite teams to bet on, UNLV, as they host Wyoming this week, and it's interesting. They've rallied around. They practice everybody as if they are a starter. They just rep every player the same amount. They rep the starters and the backups the same amount every week. So if a guy goes down, everybody's ready to go, right? And so they're trotting out a redshirt freshman quarterback because Doug Brumfield got hurt. But their big star, I think, as far as draft prospects go, is probably their wide receiver, Ricky White, who's having a huge season. Was just added to the Bolitnikoff watch list, which why are you still adding players 12 weeks into the season? I don't know. But proud to be a voter. But I don't get that logic. Is there anybody from Wyoming I need to focus on in this game?
Easton Gibbs, the linebacker, a pretty good tackle linebacker, a little on the smaller side, but he can hit. And I know how much you love kickers, so kicker John Hoyland for Wyoming maybe has a shot to get drafted.
I love some kickers. You know this. 11 a.m. on ESPNU Saturday, I'll be watching Yale at Princeton, watching a lot of future doctors and lawyers and congressmen and stuff out there playing. That's not the guys I'm focused on, though. The two guys I'll be focused on in this game are offensive tackles. For Princeton, it's Jalen Travis, 6'7", 310, and Yale, Jonathan Mendoza, 6'8", 315. The real prize here would have been Kieran Omegaji, but he is hurt.
Yeah, he's out for the year. That's unfortunate. I'm glad I got to catch him because he's super athletic, big size. But Jalen Travis for Princeton, I caught one Princeton game, really impressed me. So I'll be interested to see what you think of him.
Yeah, not a whole lot of other to bother watching in this game. There's no Andre Yoshivas this year.
No, just watching the O-line, baby. It's in the trenches.
Shane is a glutton for punishment, so has decided to watch at 2:30 on Saturday on the Big Ten Network, Rutgers at Iowa. Are we going to see a new record low for the over-under this week? Currently trending at 29, 29 and a half. Jesus, this is awful football. But so you're just watching the defense here, right? And that's all you're because there's nothing worth watching on the offense. Cooper DeJean, corner, defensive back, special teams extraordinaire is the prize here. Potential top 15 pick for the Hawkeyes. They also have maybe the top punter in this class, which you're going to see him a lot this weekend, I would imagine. Torrey Taylor. For Rutgers, defense is the name of the game here, right? With Max Melton, their corner, Tyreen Powell, their linebacker as well. So it's just definitely a defensive game for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only offensive player is probably Mason Richmond, the offensive tackle for Iowa, 6'6", 308. But outside of that,
it's not his fault the skill players can't score.
Yeah, and the tight ends, the two tight ends for Iowa are hurt, so they would be, Iowa's a tight end machine. They would be the guys if they were playing.
At this point, if an Iowa tight end never caught a pass in his collegiate career, I'd still draft him at this point. I'd throw it in the 7th round. Just take a chance because they're going to be an athlete.
Right.
That's the way it is. I don't make the rules. 6 p.m. on Fox Saturday, Shane, you'll be watching West Virginia at Oklahoma. Bit of falling off here for the Sooners after starting out undefeated and beating Texas. They've lost 2 in a row. They're going to try to save face here against West Virginia. Anxious to see what you think of, because I mentioned him a couple of weeks ago. Their tight end, Cole Taylor, is a guy I really liked when I watched him. So anxious to see how you feel about him. But seen a lot of talk about their other interior offensive lineman, Brandon Yates, for West Virginia. So anxious to see what you think about him.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to watch that West Virginia offense. Because you mentioned Brandon Yates, who I haven't really focused on, but I like Zach Frazier, one of their other interior linemen. Oklahoma has some good linemen. Tyler Guyton I had in my first round, their offensive tackle. So it's going to be kind of fun to watch some of these offensive linemen play this week.
Yep. And finally, Shane, you'll be watching at 7 p.m. on the ACC network. Duke at North Carolina. I don't know if you're going to get Riley Leonard or Graham Barton this week.
Yeah, probably not.
But you will get Drake May. So you got that to look forward to, right?
Yeah, we'll see if he can convince me that he should be QB1 here. But North Carolina's got a ton of prospects. Tez Walker is taking over in that slot position, receiver for them. I've talked on the show about Cedric Gray, their linebacker, I'm a big fan of. And Bryson Nesbitt, their tight end, is breaking out even more now. So kind of an interesting offensive scheme there at North Carolina this year. I like to see some of these peripheral pieces too.
There you go. That's going to conclude our look ahead to week 11 of college football. You may have noticed we just not really watching the big games this week. So
yeah, we'll watch a lot of big teams, already.
Right.
So I'll probably watch the big games live, and then
I will as well
for the scouting.
Yeah. All right, Shane, you're back. You got the dub last week. 4-7 now.
Yes, we're gonna get.
I took the L last week. SMU just could not put Rice away last week.
Yeah.
And it was sad, Shane, is I mentioned 3 games last week. And the other 2 that I mentioned both hit. The one I picked did not. So, but that's the way it goes. I'm down to 6-5 this week. So, against my better judgment, I am going Homer this week.
I was gonna say last week you could have bet a little Jacksonville State, and
I could have, and I would have won.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to say Homer this week. I think they're going to blow Vanderbilt out of the water this week.
South Carolina blowing out
South Carolina minus 13.5. I'm going to lay those points and a Gamecock big win this week.
Not respecting Vanderbilt here.
Should I? Listen, Vanderbilt's closest SEC loss this year was last week. They lost to Auburn by 16 points. That is their closest game they played in the SEC.
It is, but they only lost to Georgia by 17. I think that's pretty impressive.
South Carolina only lost to them by 10.
Right.
And led for most of the game.
There you go. So South Carolina will beat Vandy by 7. That's
the rule. That's the logic here.
Yeah, that's how
they're winning by at least 2 touchdowns this week.
No, all right. No, that's fair. Vanderbilt is not a good team. So,
who do you got this week, Shane?
Look, if I have to watch Iowa Rutgers, I better have some money riding on this game. So I'm taking Iowa minus 1.5 against Rutgers. I actually think Rutgers is a good team. They played well against Ohio State, but I think they really put everything into that game. I think Iowa wins this one with defense. I think they shut them down, and Iowa can stumble into the end zone once and win 7-3.
Over under 29.5.
Right. I think I might go under.
That's the saddest part. They've had record over unders like 3 weeks in a row, and every under is hit. It's wild to me. All right. So that's our lock of the week. Shane going Iowa minus 1.5 against Rutgers. I am going South Carolina minus 13.5 against Vandy. So take that information however you'd like.
Right.
All right. Let's move on. I mentioned in the open, I think this edge class is pretty loaded. I mean, I have currently in my top 150, I have 6 edge rushers in the top 22, 5 in the top 13. I think this is a deep class. We're going to talk about I'm going to say we're going to talk about at least 7 different guys tonight, if I had to guess. So we'll start at the top. I know our number ones are going to be different here because you have injury concerns with him. I'm not going to factor that into my evaluation. I'm just going to factor in what I've seen on the field the last 2 years. I think Latu is the top edge rusher in this class based off skill set, production, just everything else that I've seen so far to date tells me he's the top edge in this class.
I've made the move as well. I've put him number 1 edge in this class last week. I think he's just a little bit bigger, stronger, more consistent than the other top edges in this class. So I'm with you. I think Latu, as long as the medical checks out, I think he can be a top 10 pick.
All right. So that brings us to number 2 here. We should preface this, by the way, that these are the top 5 edges that we expect to enter the NFL draft. And now that these guys can go to all-star games, that we might actually get some other guys in here now that maybe wouldn't have, or definitely will have a chance to play in those all-star games. Number 2 on this list for me is still, although I'm teetering, Florida State's Jared Verse. I don't think he's had the season this year that he had last year, production-wise, but you still see the ability in the run game as well as the passing game to take over a game, if you will, at times. So I still like Verse here, but I'm not opposed to moving him up or down, or moving him down a little bit if need be.
Yeah, he's Jared Verse is still my number 2 as well. He's had dominant games this year. He's really had 2 games that Virginia Tech and Wake Forest. I was like, all right, this is the guy that we were waiting for. And then the next week's kind of a dud, or he's not doing much. And teams are definitely keying in on him. If you watch the game against Pitt, for example, I mean that they were. Running back was chipping him, was ready for Jared Verse every single play. Like, he has to get through 2 players in most cases to get any type of penetration. I think he's still playing well. Is he got to be the second edge taken in the draft? I don't know, but I think I feel more comfortable that Jared Verse is going to have a pretty long career in the NFL, maybe compared to some of the upside players that we're going to talk about next.
Yep. Number 3 on my board is a guy who I think maybe ends up at the Senior Bowl now, as opposed to not, and it could be a nice box office get for them down here. Dallas Turner from Alabama is my number 3 edge rusher. Another guy who, like not unlike Jared Verse, who has flashed dominance at times this season and taken over games. So he had the flashes last year as well when he had Will Anderson on the opposite side of him. This year, it's been kind of him and Chris Braswell, who we may or may not end up talking about later. I don't know yet. But I think Turner, like I said, he's 6'4", 245, so maybe he's a bit on the lighter side. We'll see how that maybe goes up or down as we go through the process. But Turner, like I said, has flash dominance. Did get that what I thought was a fairly dirty hit against Jaden Daniels this past week. Probably should have been thrown out of the game for targeting, but I don't make those calls.
Yeah, he's my number 3 as well. I think Dallas Turner is exceptional, 5-star recruit, top tier athlete. He gets to the quarterback like almost every game. He's back there. He's making plays. I don't think he'll be at the Senior Bowl. Sorry, Brian. I don't think that'll happen. I think the upside is higher than Jared Verse. I think Dallas Turner could be, a top 5 edge rusher in the NFL, right? He has that potential. I think he also could flame out at that size if he can't get off blocks, and that's going to be the big question.
Right. I'm gonna be honest, Shane. I thought we would would have veered
off lockstep. So I think we'll start veering off here, maybe, but we'll see.
Maybe. Number 4 to me is your guy, your Buckeye here, JT Tuimoloau. I've seen enough. I think he's probably the most scheme diverse of all of these edge rushers, where I think he could make that third down living inside at the NFL level, and those sub packages, those pass rush packages where they move those guys around. He sets the edge great in the run game, and he showed against Olu Fashanu a few weeks ago what he plays the top competition. He can take over that at times, and that's the kind of games where you see him show up and he shows out. Does he disappear at times? A little bit, right?
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's very inconsistent, and so I don't have him in my top five. I'm kind of on the line if he declares or not, as it is. So for Tui Wow, like there are times you watch him, you're like, man, this guy is big and he's fast and he can push anyone around. And then there are times he kind of gets swallowed up. So it's a tough sell for me, and that's the problem with edge rushers, right? Is really, if you're great for 7 plays, that can be enough to make
it. Could be enough, yeah.
And I think Tuimoloau can do that, but he's also has these long stretches of nothing, of bad decisions, even against the run, or that kind of get me and have me drop him down. Once again, high risk, high reward, kind of like Dallas Turner is.
Where's he currently at on your board?
He's 6th on my board.
Okay. So just outside. Who's number 4 then?
For number 4 for me, a player I consider not including. It could go back to school, but because of the injury this year, but I'm going Chop Robinson from Penn State. I think he ends up declaring. It seems like things are swinging back in his direction. Chop Robinson spent a year at Maryland, transferred to Penn State. Really big fan of his last season, where I thought Robinson looked like the best Penn State defender on the field for a lot of those games last season. And so we've seen him not play here the past 2 games due to injury, but had been dominant in the run game up until now, and that's what I really like. He can set the edge, run down running backs, go into the outside, does well with that. Really good about reading the offense. Plus, you have the top-tier athleticism and pass rush ability. I think Robinson should be a first-round pick if he declares and all the medical works out.
He's 6th on my board and 22nd overall. So yeah, I'm with you. I think he's a great player. Just outside of my top 5. Number 5 for me, wrap up this list, is another guy who I think has that run setting power and not the most aggressive in the pass rush, but can combine, to make plays. I mean, he's very, very good at it. Don't get me wrong. And it's Braylon Trice from Washington, my number 5 guy. He's a productive player for sure. One of the leading sack guys on their team, along with ZTF. So it's I've debated with him and Chop Robinson and Chris Braswell a lot, who I like here at number 5, but I ended up settling on Trice.
I think I've had Trice at like 3 and felt good, and I have him at 7 right now, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that can make sense too. Like you said, not flashy, is good at what he does. I think he's a player you had in your Senior Bowl predictions. If he goes to the Senior Bowl, I have a feeling he's going to be in my top 5. Like he's going to do really well down there, and I think we're going to really see, here's the potential that Braylon Trice has. It's a lot of you take that game against Oregon, they threw the ball so quickly. It was just tough for him to get any traction, and so I think that will help. My number 5, you mentioned, it is Chris Braswell, the edge rusher from Alabama. I have him, I think in many ways he's played better than Dallas Turner this season, especially with how Alabama utilizes Braswell. He's not just a pin your ears back pass rush type of player. They'll drop him into coverage. He'll go up to the line, look like he's going to rush and sit in a soft zone and make an interception or play the run. The instincts are just out of this world with Chris Braswell. Another guy that's on the lighter side, but I think very versatile I'd love to see in a 3-4 defense that uses those outside backers in numerous roles.
I like Braswell as well. He's currently 7 on my board. So we've roundabout talked about the top 7 players on each of our boards. So there you go. 2 more guys I want to talk about that I think have a chance to go higher than maybe anybody are predicting right now. Let's get your thoughts quickly on Florida's Princely Umanmielen and Penn State's Adiza Isaac.
Yeah, those are the next 2 on my board as well. I mean, I think Adiza Isaac has played extremely well. I really liked him coming out of high school as well, and just never quite put it together. And this year he's putting it together from a pass rush perspective, very clean in terms of how he uses his hands and his feet. And then Umanmielen is wild. I mean, he's a fun watch if you haven't watched Florida, because I mean there are times when he's out of position and like I don't know what he's doing. He's taking bad angles, and then you take a game like against Arkansas, and he's, I mean, so quick off the edge. I think both those guys are solid top 50 type picks.
Yeah. I mean, both of those guys, by the time the process is over, could have played themselves into the first round conversation, or they're going to be solid early day 2 guys. But so quickly recap here, the top 5 edge rushers for myself are UCLA's Laiatu Latu, Florida State's Jared Verse, Dallas Turner from Alabama, JT Tuimoloau, Ohio State, and Braylon Trice from Washington. For Shane, it is UCLA's Laiatu Latu, Florida State's Jared Verse, Dallas Turner at 3, Chop Robinson from Penn State at 4, and Chris Braswell from Alabama at 5. But yeah, you agree that this is a pretty loaded edge class throughout.
Yeah, it continues to be just a high importance for college teams, high importance for NFL teams. I think we're gonna have good edge classes moving forward for a while.
Yep. So that's gonna do it for that. And as we mentioned at the top, now we're Senior Bowling the rest of the show here as invites have started going out. 3 that we know about. 1 has been accepted so far. So we'll talk about the first one. Quarterback Michael Pratt from Tulane gets the first invite, and he is at this point, the only Senior Bowl acceptance.
Which is wild to me. I mean, there were rumors literally a week ago that Michael Pratt was getting NIL money tossed at him from bigger schools to transfer up, that might be happening, which I still think is a possibility. Like, he's only a 4-year player. If teams come calling to transfer up and it's some good schools, like, I think it's going to be tough for Michael Pratt to say no. So maybe it's just I didn't predict him. I didn't think he would declare. I didn't think he'd go to the NFL. So I didn't predict him on my list. But I don't know if we see Michael Pratt in Mobile ultimately.
We'll see.
He accepted. So
he did accept. And the other 2 players that received invites today. First was an FCS player, edge rusher, Jalix Hunt from Houston Christian, got the invite today, as well as Kansas State tight end Ben Sinnott.
Yeah, I mean, I like Sinnott a lot. He's had a really good season. He's definitely intriguing. And I think his teammates, Cooper Bebe also received an invitation, as well. So, they've been the best players for Kansas State ultimately.
So that would be 2 for you.
That would be 2 for me. Yeah, I mean that was kind of a layup, but I'll take it.
Well, there you go. Hey, we'll take what we can get. I did have Jalix Hunt on mine. We're going to talk about my predictions, whatever they're worth now, in just a second. But I had Jalix Hunt on my just missed from defensive ends, and well, obviously that was a miss for me. So
yeah, I still have to watch Jalix Hunt, so I
haven't
on that this
watched
week.
him either. So
yeah.
All right. So speaking of that, I dropped my Senior Bowl defensive player predictions today. 12 defensive ends, 12 defensive tackles, 14 linebackers, 16 corners, and 8 safeties. So, Shane, I tasked you yesterday. I said, go in there and look. You see who I've got. Like not unlike what I did with you last week. I want you to give me one player that you would have added to each pile, and you can't say Jalix Hunt for defensive end.
Oh man, you're taking my the end was tough, so that was tough, and I'm not going to include underclassmen here because that would be
that wouldn't be fair. No,
that
it wouldn't be
fair
fair
to you either. And plus, I think that would make it harder, to be honest, to know where that hits. So defensive end was tough. I thought your defensive end predictions were very good. So I guess I'd probably include Cedric Johnson from Mississippi as a player that I like just for the athletic upside. I guess I'd lose Grayson Murphy. I think Gabe Murphy from UCLA's there. Grayson, his twin, probably, right? But as private player lose. But I think you nailed defensive end. I mean, I think you did really well with that list.
I was with you, and where I was just going to include Gabe Murphy, but then I'm like, who doesn't like a good story?
That's right.
So that's why I put in Grayson as well. Not that he's a bad player, because he's a good player as well. He's just not on the level of his brother or of Latu. But I could see subbing out Blazik from D3 UW Platteville, who I put in there solely because I knew they were going to have some lower level guys. I just picked the wrong one.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe I picked the wrong one. Maybe they have both. I don't know.
I know you include a lot more small school players than I did, which is probably smart, but I think it's always tough for us this early in the game
because we don't know which one. So we're definitely guessing here. I know you probably had at least one of the South Dakota State linemen, right?
I don't know if I did. I don't know if I did include any of them.
We'll have to go back and look.
All right, check.
Who do you sub out and in on the defensive tackles?
So defensive tackles, I'm going to go with a player that Jim Nagy dropped early, who hasn't had the best season, but I think once again the athleticism, McKinley Jackson from Texas A&M, if he declares, is probably my pick. And I try to pick someone that you didn't put in your just missed as well, because you had some good names in the just missed, like Fabian Lovett and Jawan Briggs. I guess I'd probably lose Vernon Broughton from Texas. But it was tough to pick a player to take out of this because I like the Thor Griffith from Harvard. I like that. Feels like a Senior Bowl move, just once again, a good story right there. So I guess I'd probably lose Vernon Broughton. And, maybe it's funny now with the underclassmen. Like, I feel like Vernon Broughton might get bumped by teammate Byron Murphy if he declares who's a third-year player.
Wasn't Griffith on the freak list?
Yes, for 2 years, I think 2 in a row.
All right. Linebacker got a bit dicey for me because I don't know if you've noticed this or not, I moved a couple of edge guys into the linebacker category because they're undersized edge guys, and that's where they're going to play if they come to Mobile.
I did, which is smart. I think it's smart because that's what happens. That's exactly what happens. And so, linebacker-wise, I went with Jackson Mitchell from UConn as my pick. Like, I think we're definitely getting Christian Haynes from UConn, the interior offensive lineman. I think I'd probably pair him with Jackson Mitchell, who's had a good year. Taking someone out, I guess Marlo Wax. But this is why you're better at this than me, because you did a really good job with some of these linebackers, like Eugene Asante from Auburn. You're right. Like, he's probably going to go. I wouldn't have even thought to put him in, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was. I started looking at some of these guys, and it's like he hasn't been that productive this year. But like Richard Gibonor from Troy, NFL teams are going to love his length and his size and athleticism, and I think that's kind of his ticket to get in this game, right? And I was looking at guys like these they love these conversions, right? So that's how I get in like a praise. I'm a Wole from UTEP, JJ Weaver from Kentucky. And I was really surprised at how good of a season Kalen DeLoach has had at Florida State when I was researching this. So that's why I included him as well. But yeah. Corner, I'm going to be honest, this felt kind of easy going through these names. I really don't think outside. Now, you told me that Jalen Simpson is probably a safety, which is fine for this exercise. We'll just say we had 9 safeties and 15 corners, if you will. But I really thought going through this, I could have put more corners in. Like, I feel like I left some guys out. And I mentioned the small schools guys like PJ Jules from Southern Illinois. I've never watched him play, but I know he's got great size and length, and they love them some FCS corners at the Senior Bowl.
Right, they do. That's why, like, PJ Jules, I think, is gonna be there. Feels pretty good. I think it was another one where it's tough to pick like who to take out. I mentioned Simpson to you, but corner and safety gets very blurry at the Senior Bowl. So I guess Kalen Carson from Wake Forest is probably mine. I guess if I had to pick a guy to lose, would be Ennis Rickshaw from Missouri, the other Missouri corner. And the only other one I consider was Nehemiah Pritchett from Auburn. I think did he get an invite last year?
Yes, and I completely forgot about that. So
okay. That doesn't mean he will this year,
right? That's a good call on him. I can tell you one of all these 16 guys I have on this list, the one I feel the best about is Chris Abrams-Drain from Missouri because he's from Mobile.
Like he's getting in, right?
He's in. 100%. How about the safeties? Because I don't feel good about this. I feel good about the players, but I don't feel good about my evaluations, so to speak.
Yeah, saying safety is always tough. I think you put the wrong Ohio State safety in, so that's what I'm going with. I think Lathan Ransom, though he has an injury right now, looks like he'll be back. I think he would get in over Josh Proctor for Ohio State. Maybe both make it. They do like to have their Buckeyes up there. So that's probably what I'd go with. Though I like some of your just missed, like Patrick McMorris from Cal, I think is intriguing. Jalen Catalon from Texas is intriguing as well. And
Catalon's definitely intriguing from how good he was to kind of where he is now. I like McMorris more at San Diego State than I have this season.
Yeah, kind of old guys. The Shiloh Sanders slip in from Colorado is. Do you think they would just do it just to do it?
Yes, 100% yes, and that is why he was on this list. 100% yes.
If that feels like such a shrine move, it feels more of a shrine move, right? They just
and it could be, but to get that pub. But yeah, so those are that's my Senior Bowl predictions on defense. You can read them at draftcountdown.com for what it's worth. Like I said, we had no idea that this underclassmen announcement was coming today. The games did. They knew it was coming. We did not. We were not privy to this information. We always, this time every year, we've done this for this is our 3rd year doing this now. So we do this the same time every year. We had no idea this was coming. So essentially these are useless now for the most part, but it was a fun exercise for us. We're still going to keep score at home and see how it works out for us there. See how it goes. But that's it.
I don't think we're beating last year's score though now. So.
No, absolutely not. We're not going to, I don't think we're going above 60% like we did last year. At this point, I'm just hoping we get around 40.
I think we can hit 50.
We'll see. All right. We had no questions in the Discord. I don't think we had any on Twitter. We do have one in the chat from Sal. He asked another question. Did Jared Verse really gain anything by coming back for one more year? No, I don't think he did.
Here's the reason he came back, and what he might gain is the national championship, right? I mean, they're gonna go to the playoff. I don't know if anyone's gonna beat Florida State in the ACC. So if that was the goal, then you're hitting it. But draft capital wise, no.
Yeah, probably right. All right. So that's going to do it for tonight's episode of the Draft Countdown podcast. Final thoughts. Shane, you had a 7-round mock. Everybody go check that out. I think I'm going to go 2 rounds this week, Shane.
Oh,
I'm going to go out to 2 rounds this week.
Proud of you. Yeah.
And just kind of expand it out a little bit. See how that goes for me. But Shane, you had some big business news this week. You want to talk about that right quick?
Yeah, so the other podcast that I'm on, which I know a lot of listeners to this maybe found this through that, the Devy Marketplace was a fantasy football Devy college centered podcast, and we're ending the show. We have 2 more weeks of it. We're going to do a big live stream Monday, November 20th, if you want to participate and watch and listen to that show. But yeah, ending. The show's been running for almost 4 years. I've been on it about 3 years. And enjoyed it, but it's kind of been time to move on. So I'm still sticking here with Draft Countdown, and fantasy wise, maybe I'm going to take a couple years off, but down the line, I know I'll be back in the podcasting fantasy football game at some point.
Yeah, was a guest on there a couple of times and had a blast on there. Kane's great, Nelly's great. Hate that it's going away, but glad that you're still here. So,
yeah, we have I think the best opening theme song in all sports podcast history. So you can check that. You can listen to that if you've never listened to the show. Let's go download Devy Marketplace and give us some love.
It's a lot can happen with a good theme song, right?
That's true. Carried us for a while,
All right, so that's going to do it for tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown podcast. As always, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like the videos, share them out as well. If you're listening to this on an audio platform, be it Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review there. Share it out as well. We'd love to get the listenership up on the audio version of this show. You can follow me on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Follow Shane at Shane P. Hallam. Follow Draft Countdown at Draft Countdown, and go to draftcountdown.com for all of your NFL draft needs 24/7. We're live over there. For Shane, I'm Brian. Good night, everybody.